The smell of sweet barbecue smoke drifted lazily through the warm air of Yonkai Estate, an upscale, picture-perfect neighborhood that prided itself on manicured lawns and shiny mailboxes. On any other day, the smoky aroma would make your mouth water for the next big neighborhood cookout. But for me, Gail, it brought a thick wave of panic. I sensed trouble the moment I noticed my baby goat, Pinky, was missing from his pen. Little did I know that on the other side of my tall wooden fence, the most outrageous, shocking scene was unfolding under the watchful eye of Karen Jackson, our dreaded Homeowners Association president. In less than an hour, I would stumble onto a backyard barbecue from my worst nightmares, one so bizarre that even the boldest gossip in Yonkai Estate couldn't have imagined it. But that's not the craziest part. The real shocker? A hidden piece of Karen's past would burst into the open, leaving everyone speechless. If you think you've seen an entitled neighbor, wait until you meet Karen. And trust me, this final twist will change how you see her forever. Hey, before we jump into this wild story, I have a small favor to ask. If you could take a second to hit that like button and subscribe, it would really help our channel grow and bring you even more crazy stories like this one. Also, we love seeing where our audience is tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far our community is spreading. The sun blazed over Yonkai Estate, turning the rows of perfect houses into a blinding sea of privilege. The kind of neighborhood where every blade of grass was monitored like a national treasure, and people whispered in hushed tones about unsightly decorations, like a single leaf out of place. I pulled into my driveway grinning, a brand new colorful rope toy sitting in the passenger seat. It was for Pinky, my beloved baby goat. Not just any goat. Pinky was my best bud, my fluffy little shadow, a tiny hoofed troublemaker with an appetite for destruction. He'd nibble on anything, shoes, chair legs, and even my neighbor's overly pretentious topiary bushes. But when I walked up to his pen, the grin was wiped off my face. The gate was latched. The padlock was still in place. No footprints in the dirt. But Pinky? Gone. My stomach flipped. Pinky? My voice came out shaky. No bleat, no familiar clatter of tiny hooves, just an eerie, gut-wrenching silence. It was like my goat had been sucked into another dimension. My heart pounded as my mind raced. Did he escape? Did he get snatched by some deranged goat thief? Then it hit me. Karen Jackson, Yonkai Estate's self-appointed queen of the HOA, dictator of neighborhood order, and walking, talking embodiment of a migraine. She had made it her personal mission to rid the estate of what she called my unsightly farmyard mess. Never mind that my mess was one tiny, adorable goat who just so happened to exist near her property. To Karen, Pinky was an insult to her carefully curated suburban utopia. The thought that she would actually steal my goat? Even for Karen, that seemed excessive. Then old Mr. Henderson shuffled up to the fence, chewing his ever-present toothpick, his retired cop instincts honed to perfection. "Gail," he muttered, eyes darting around like we were in some kind of undercover sting operation. "I saw something weird this morning. That Karen lady, she was carrying something. Looked kind of like your goat, like a big old grocery bag, but alive." I nearly dropped to the ground. "She what? Where did she take him?" Henderson gave a grave nod toward Karen's house. "Right into her backyard. Then she waved at me like she was real proud of herself." Oh, it was on. I stormed toward the fence, heart hammering, pressing my eye against a tiny gap in the wood. What I saw made my blood run cold. Karen's backyard was transformed into a scene straight out of a high society cooking show. A fancy grill station shimmered in the sunlight, complete with sleek bar stools and a chef, an actual professional chef, flipping something on the grill. Around him, a group of Karen's perfectly manicured, snooty friends sipped wine from glasses so delicate they probably shattered if you breathed too hard. And there, right in the middle of the yard, tied to a metal stake, was Pinky. And that's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just being her usual villainous, insufferable self. Karen was about to turn my best friend into a 4-course meal. Oh no, Karen, you messed with the wrong goat, Dad. This wasn't just a fight over HOA rules anymore. This was war. My hands shook as I climbed the stepladder, heart pounding. The greasy scent of sizzling meat clung to the humid air like a bad omen. Pinky was in danger, and the only thing between him and safety was Karen Jackson, the HOA's self-proclaimed queen of entitlement. I peered over the fence, my stomach twisting. There stood Karen in a hot pink apron that read, "Bow to your HOA leader," her smug, red-lipped grin aimed straight at me. "Well, well, well," she sneered. "If it isn't Gail, our resident farm clown, climbing fences now? What's next? Grazing on my lawn like that ugly goat of yours?" I gritted my teeth. "Karen, give me back my goat, now!" she gasped theatrically. "Your goat? You mean the stray I rescued before he got flattened by traffic? Honestly, Gail, you should be thanking me." "Funny," I snapped. "My locked pen says otherwise." She waved dismissively. "Technicalities. Anyway, we're having a fabulous barbecue, and Pinky would make a delightful—" "Don't even say it," Karen smirked. "People eat goat all the time, you know. It's cultured. Maybe if you weren't such a backwoods hick, you'd understand that." I gripped the fence, seething. "You stole my pet," she sighed dramatically. "Oh, Gail, it's not stealing, it's reallocating resources for the good of Yonkai Estate. No more bleeding, no more farm smell, and an exclusive dinner experience. Everybody wins." My vision blurred with rage. I wanted to vault over the fence and rescue Pinky, but Karen was a master manipulator. If I made the wrong move, she'd call security and paint me as the criminal. I forced a slow smile. "You know what, Karen? Maybe I misjudged you." Her eyes narrowed. "Of course you did. I always know best." Swallowing my disgust, I said, "Maybe I can help make this event even more spectacular." Karen perked up. "Go on. I'd love to share this on social media, maybe even go live. Show everyone how classy Yonkai Estate is." Her eyes lit up. She lived for social media attention. "Finally embracing real sophistication, Gail?" "Absolutely," I lied. "In fact, you should stream this now. Let the world see." Karen turned to her hired film crew. "Don't miss a second. I want this trending." As she fixated on her broadcast, I discreetly recorded everything on my phone and fired off frantic messages to my allies, Lacey, an animal rescue volunteer, and Darren, a fearless neighbor who loved chaos. Me. "Emergency. Karen is about to roast Pinky. Need backup now." Just then, I noticed a sharp-eyed woman lurking by the side gate, tapping on her phone and glaring at me like I was an insect. My gut twisted. Was someone else involved? Karen snapped her fingers. "So, farm boy, you in or out? My chef is very expensive, and I can't have him standing around while you whine about a goat." My heart pounded. "Fine," I growled. "I'll be going. But I'll be back." Karen's laughter rang out, high-pitched and smug. "Hurry up, then, or Pinky might be done by the time you return." Her words slashed through me like a blade. I hopped off the ladder, fists clenched. This was war, and Karen Jackson had no idea what was coming. The moment my feet hit the grass, my phone buzzed. "Lacey, on my way with animal rescue. We'll cause a scene." A scene was exactly what I needed. Fueled by rage, I scrambled for supplies, rope, tarp, fireworks, for chaos, and my GoPro. If Karen Jackson thought she could turn Pinky into dinner, she was about to get a reality check. Darren pulled up in his smoky old pickup. "Dude, HOA security might get involved." "Karen stole my goat. That's rustling. That's a felony." Darren whistled. "We gotta save Pinky before she makes him into kebabs." Lacey arrived with animal rescue volunteers holding signs. "Stop goat theft and love your animals." "Karen is unbelievable," she fumed. "Believe it," I muttered. "We need a plan." We peeked through the fence. Karen bragged to her guests. "Farm-to-table goat, now that's sophistication." Her guests nodded, sipping wine, while Pinky trembled near the grill. Lacey whispered, "We distract them with the protest. You and Darren grab Pinky." "Let's do this," Darren said. Just as we pried a fence board loose. "What are you doing?" "I'm Regina, Karen's mother. Leave before I call security." "Oh great, Karen 2.0, Elder Edition." Just then, shouts erupted. The protest had begun. Rich guests gasped as if human rights had just slapped them in the face. Darren nudged me. "Now's our chance." We slipped inside. The smoky air churned my stomach as we weaved through Karen's absurdly large hedges. And then, Pinky. I knelt, fumbling with the rope. "Hang on, buddy." Just as I loosened the knot. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen stood there, wine in one hand, spatula in the other, like a deranged suburban warlord. Her guests gawked in horror. I tightened my grip on Pinky's rope. Oh, it was on. Karen's face twisted in fury as she jabbed a manicured finger at me. "You dared trespass on my property during my exclusive barbecue?" I stood firm, Pinky trembling at my side. "You stole my goat, Karen. Give me one good reason I shouldn't call the cops." Karen's smile was pure venom. "I am the president of the Yonkai Estate HOA. Get out before I have you arrested." I pulled out my phone. "Call them. I've got half the neighborhood and an animal rescue team outside who saw you steal Pinky. The cops will love hearing about your farm-to-table dinner." Karen's guests started inching away, clearly not wanting to be associated with a goat thief. But Karen only doubled down. "Listen, you hillbilly—" Before she could finish, Pinky let out a terrified bleat, knocking over a table of expensive drinks. Wine splashed everywhere like a scene from a horror movie. "Do you see what you've done?" Karen shrieked. "You and that filthy animal!" A firm voice cut through the chaos. "Karen Jackson!" Two uniformed officers pushed through the crowd, led by Lacey, smirking triumphantly. Karen's fake smile snapped into place. "Officers! Perfect timing! This man is trespassing! Remove him!" The taller officer folded his arms. "Miss Jackson, we received multiple calls about a stolen goat." Karen's eyes darted wildly. "It was wandering near the road. I rescued it." The second officer arched a brow. "Rescued? Gail reported it stolen from a locked pen." Lacey waved her phone. "We have a live stream of you bragging about cooking fresh goat. It's all over social media. People are calling it rustling." Karen's jaw dropped. "Rustling? This is Yonkai Estate, not a Western movie." The officer frowned. "Stealing livestock is serious. In many states, it leads to jail time." Karen wobbled like a malfunctioning robot. "Gail was neglecting him, so I—" "Neglect?" I cut in. "Pinky is family. You had no right." Protesters burst in, chanting, "Stop goat theft!" Cameras rolled, capturing every moment of Karen's downfall. Seeing my chance, I scooped up Pinky and moved toward the exit, but Karen lunged, yanking his rope. "That goat is mine!" Pinky wailed, thrashing against her grip. That was it. The officers pried Karen's clawed hands off Pinky. "Miss Jackson, calm down or we'll detain you." Karen whipped toward me, eyes blazing. "You'll pay for this, Gail." Then from behind us, a voice, smooth, smug, cut through the tension. "You always had a flair for dramatics, dear." Every head turned. An older woman with razor-sharp eyes and a knowing smirk stepped forward. Karen stiffened. "Mom, what are you—" Regina ignored her, turning to the officers. "I'd like to make a statement." Karen made a strangled noise somewhere between a gasp and a dying goat's last breath. And just like that, the real fun was about to begin. A stunned silence gripped the yard. Officers gathered everyone near Karen's wrecked patio furniture. Regina stood smugly, arms crossed, while Karen looked like a cornered raccoon. I clutched Pinky, my heart pounding. Regina's eerie calm sent a chill down my spine. What was she about to reveal? Officer Chavez flipped open her notepad. "Ma'am, your name?" Regina lifted her chin. "Regina Holmes. My daughter prefers Jackson. I specialize in city planning and property disputes." A murmur rippled through the crowd. So that's why Karen thought she was untouchable. Karen chuckled nervously. "Mom, I don't know what you think." "Shh." Regina silenced her with a flick of her wrist. "It seems my daughter got carried away. She thought stealing the goat would elevate the neighborhood's image." Karen's face twisted in rage. "Mom!" Regina remained ice cold. "Standing with the law, dear." Officer Remy frowned. "So she stole the goat?" Regina sighed dramatically. "Yes, and she intended to, well, prepare it for her barbecue." Karen screeched, "You're lying!" Regina arched a brow. "Shall I read your texts aloud?" Karen paled, her eyes darting around for an ally. But her wine-sipping clique had vanished. Even her chef had abandoned ship. Officer Chavez extended a hand. "If you have evidence, ma'am." Regina handed over her phone, smirking. She even called it Gail's goat rescue turned classy dinner. Quite the spectacle, wasn't it? The yard erupted in gasps. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just HOA pettiness, this was insanity. Karen turned on me, seething. "This is your fault, Gail. That filthy goat ruined everything." Darren stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Lady, you're one tantrum away from getting tossed into a dumpster." I met her glare. "No, Karen, you did this. You stole my pet and tried to serve him for dinner. Now, it's biting you back." She lunged, but Officer Remy blocked her. "Miss Jackson, enough." He turned to me. "Gail, take your goat and step back." Relief washed over me. Lacey hugged me. "You did it." Darren grinned. Neighborhood legend. Karen, however, wasn't done. "I'll sue all of you. I am the HOA president," Officer Chavez sighed. "For now." Phones recorded Karen's meltdown, whispers of full psycho mode spreading. Meanwhile, Regina slinked away, untouched. Something about that was unsettling. She had gutted Karen without hesitation. Eventually, the police wrapped up their investigation, but Karen Jackson was far from wrapping up her tantrum. She was handed a citation for theft and was staring down the barrel of additional charges for rustling livestock. But the cherry on top? Animal cruelty might also be thrown in, given that she had every intention of serving Pinky as the main course at her twisted barbecue. And how did Karen react? With the grace and dignity of a rabid raccoon caught in a trap. She shrieked in pure outrage, flailing her arms like she was trying to swat invisible bees. "This is a setup, a witch hunt! I am the victim here!" she bellowed, her face turning a blotchy shade of red that perfectly matched the spilled wine on her patio. She flung one desperate look at her retreating guests, but they were already making themselves scarce, pulling their designer scarves over their faces like they could hide their association with her sheer lunacy. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was having the time of their lives. People gathered along the property line, phones out, filming what would surely become the next viral neighborhood meltdown. Every time Pinky let out a triumphant bleat, a fresh round of cheers erupted. The protesters weren't just holding their signs, they were chanting in unison. "Justice for Pinky! Goat napping is a crime! Karen's going down!" Karen was practically foaming at the mouth. Then she spotted me, Pinky safe in my arms, his fluffy head nuzzled into my chest. Her eyes burned with so much hate I thought she might actually try to lunge at me and take a bite herself. "You'll regret this, Gail," she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "I promise, you'll never live peacefully here again." I cocked my head and grinned. "Karen, after today, I don't think you'll be running Yonkai Estate much longer." She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Don't underestimate me. My mother might have stabbed me in the back, but I always land on top. Yonkai Estate is mine." Before I could reply, Officer Chavez stepped in with the patience of a saint dealing with a particularly deranged toddler. "Miss Jackson, you're one outburst away from spending the night in jail. I highly suggest you take a deep breath and sit down," Karen sputtered, pointing wildly at me. "But this is a travesty, an attack on my legacy." "Sit down," Officer Chavez said firmly, and for the first time in history, Karen actually listened, though she did it with all the grace of a wounded peacock, flopping onto a lawn chair with her arms crossed in peak tantrum mode. Just when we thought we had hit peak absurdity, a sleek black car pulled up. Out stepped an older woman in a simple floral dress, carrying, of all things, a bouquet of flowers. "Who the heck is that?" Darren muttered beside me. "I have no clue," I admitted. The woman strode confidently through the wreckage of Karen's ruined party, stopping just short of the group of officers. Her voice rang clear over the murmurs. "I'm looking for Karen Jackson. I heard about the barbecue." The crowd collectively held its breath as she turned toward Karen, whose face drained of all color. Her lips parted slightly before she whispered, "Mother-in-law?" A ripple of stunned whispers swept through the yard. The older woman nodded, stepping closer. "Karen, dear, you told me you were pregnant, that you needed good fortune." Several onlookers gasped. "Pregnant?" I blurted, mirroring the reaction of, well, everyone. Even the cops raised their eyebrows. Karen's mother-in-law dabbed at her eyes. "I heard about your plan to cook a goat, and it reminded me of an old family legend, one about stealing livestock for luck during pregnancy." Her voice trembled. "I never thought you'd actually follow through." Karen's expression flickered between rage and humiliation. You don't understand," she muttered. The entire yard was dead silent. I swore I could hear Pinky chewing softly on my shirt in the tension-filled void. I turned to Lacey, who had gone as pale as a ghost. "Is this real life?" she whispered. Karen let out a shaky sigh before admitting, "I read about it when I was a kid, how stealing a farm animal brings good fortune for an unborn child. I thought if I did it here, it would seal my re-election and bring luck to my pregnancy." The collective confusion was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Darren rubbed his temples. "That's next-level crazy, dude." My stomach turned. So all of this, stealing Pinky, threatening to turn him into dinner, was part of some warped ancient superstition? Officer Remy cleared his throat. Look, pregnancy or not, Miss Jackson committed a crime. Superstition doesn't change that. Her mother-in-law sighed. We accept whatever legal outcome is decided. At that, Karen cracked. She crumpled to her knees, full-on ugly crying. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks as the weight of reality sank in. All her power, her influence, her delusions of control, it had all come crashing down in the most spectacular way possible. Officer Remy gently helped her up and began escorting her to the patrol car. As she passed me, her face twisted into one final bitter scowl. "You'll pay for this, Gail," she hissed. I simply smiled. "I already did, Karen. I paid for Pinky. You, on the other hand, you just got what you deserve." The cops drove off with Karen in the back seat, her reign over Yonkai Estate officially over. And just to hammer in the final nail, an emergency HOA meeting was called the following week. Karen was removed as president and replaced with a far more reasonable neighbor. As for Pinky, he became the neighborhood's beloved mascot. People stopped by with treats, kids asked to take pictures with him, and the entire estate seemed to breathe easier without Karen's tyrannical rule. So in the end, justice was served, and thankfully it wasn't in the form of goat stew.